At the end of the mission Old Wounds in Black Ops 2, you and your allies are thrown into the desert and left to die. It seems that you have no chance of survival until you're inexplicably saved by Viktor Reznov. If you don't know, Reznov is a character who is presumed dead at the beginning of Black Ops 1, yet your character Alex Mason hallucinates him being there throughout the game. With that in mind, there is the question that comes up occasionally of who does actually save you from the desert. And while this question has always existed, it usually isn't discussed in detail. It's just like, I wonder who it is, and then that person moves on with the game. See, what makes me interested in this topic personally are the differing opinions on this cutscene that I heard when I was a kid. When my brother and I first played this in 2012, we were just like, oh, it looks like Reznov, but Mason is just hallucinating like usual. And because we were sort of nerds with the first game's story, we were more focused on the fact that there was both a Reznov appearance and a Kravchenko appearance, rather than the question of who is actually rescuing us. The thing is, though, a few years later, I had a friend who was adamant that it was actually Reznov, and that his death was faked at the beginning of the first game. So I'm just going to dive right into the theories and explain my thought process for each of them. So I'm going to start with the idea that it really is Reznov saving you, mainly because I see it as both very interesting and also not true. The closest thing to evidence for this theory is that Reznov is never actually shown dying. His car just peels off to the side of the road, and he's most likely either killed or recaptured. And it's not like they'd be the first game to bring a supposedly dead character back way later. Where this theory falls flat, though, is of course the history of Reznov only being a figment of Mason's imagination throughout the rest of the first game. I think most of us can agree that Reznov wasn't actually there, but for the conspiracy theorists, I'm going to attempt to debunk each encounter with Reznov very quickly. When referring to the mission The Defector, Hudson says this.
He was never in Vietnam. The real defector with the Nova 6 dossier died during the attack on the MAC-V.
Now, considering his history in Black Ops 2, do I think Hudson is a trustworthy character? Not really, but there is the simple fact that no one else acknowledges Reznov in the mission either. When you encounter Reznov in the rat tunnels, the guy in front of you thinks you're crazy. And when you talk to Reznov after setting him free, Wood says this. As for Rebirth Island, I think it speaks for itself. The idea of Reznov saving you also becomes less believable when you consider the events leading up to the desert scene. You encounter Kravchenko and immediately start seeing numbers. The following scene, the numbers are telling you to kill Kravchenko. And I think it would be pretty insane to believe that when you're hallucinating the exact same way you would when you would see Reznov previously, he actually shows up for the very first time since early Black Ops 1. So, the next idea is that you're rescued by people passing by who we will never know the real identity of. This seems to be the default theory, and could very easily also be the correct one. Even though I just said that we don't know their identity, there's quite a few possibilities. I'll start by saying it could be possible that you're rescued by someone not even associated with the mission. It could just be someone passing through the desert or someone native to that area. There's also the fact that being left in the desert like this isn't an unusual punishment, it seems. I mean, when you're interrogating Kravchenko, Wood says this line.
This is a mujahideen, baby. They'll bury you up to your neck, peel your eyelids back, and leave you to fry in the desert. I'll take you out quick.
With that, I could find it somewhat believable that someone saw Mason and his allies while on horseback and just thought, oh, this again, before saving them. Next, there's the possibility that you're rescued by one of General Zhao's men. He's thrown into the desert with you, and his own soldiers have been seen on horseback throughout the mission. Obviously, they would rescue you guys, and if I'm being honest, this is the original conclusion that I came to. It seems like it might be the most practical explanation. On a similar note, it could have also been one of Ramon's men who didn't agree with the practice. After you helped them fend off the Russians, it might not seem right to just throw you in the desert to die. There's definitely some other people that I'm missing, or other groups of people that I'm missing, and if you have any theories in the comments, feel free to leave them there. Now, what's by far my favorite theory is that you were saved by one of the people in your party, with Mason and Hudson both being logical options for different reasons. Starting with Hudson, if you watch the scene where you get knocked out, you'll see that Hudson doesn't actually get choked, he just has guns pointed at him. Then once you get thrown in the desert, Mason looks away from Hudson and towards Woods and Zhao, making Hudson the only one who could go out of your sight. And finally, there's of course Mason. While this might sound a little bit ridiculous at first, I actually think this is what the game implies, that Mason is the one who saved his allies. Now, what I'm about to say isn't evidence necessarily, but it does give some important context for this theory. In Black Ops 1, whenever Mason hallucinates seeing Reznov, he speaks as him and commits whatever actions he believes are Reznov's. There may be one exception, however. During the segment in the rat tunnels, I find it hard to believe that Mason climbed over the rocks to imitate Reznov, before climbing back over to become himself again, but it isn't impossible. Now, going back to the desert, if you watch the scene closely, you'll see that Mason's hands aren't actually tied. I see absolutely no reason for the enemies to not tie Mason's hands. Everyone else has their hands tied behind their back, while Mason has no ropes at all. It makes it seem more like an Easter egg. Or in other words, a hint left in by the developers that Mason was able to get himself off of the desert sand and find help. It's likely that Reznov in this scene is Mason returning to the location of his allies, as he'd know exactly where it is, while the other guy is behind to help also. As for when Mason starts his trek to find help, it could have been right after the truck leaves, as Mason appears to be the only one who isn't unconscious, or it could have been after the screen fades to black later on. Regardless, this might be the explanation that I choose to believe, as it's both fun and actually plausible. I think that's about all I have to say for this topic. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, or you can comment which theory is your favorite and which one you actually find the most believable. Besides that, I'm going to do something that I usually try not to do, as I find it scummy. But if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. While these videos are a lot of fun to make, they take quite a bit of time as well, as I have to write the script and then record my lines whenever I'm alone, which doesn't actually happen too often. There's also the editing process, which I usually map out in my head before rummaging through my footage to find each clip. I do plan on keeping these videos coming though, so if you enjoy COD-related videos like this, why not stick around? Anyway, that's all I want to say. I'll see you guys next time.